Imagine waking up in a Roman apartment building. Well, that's not exactly a palace, is it? Okay, let's unpack this a bit. We're going to dive into what daily life was really like back in the Roman Empire based on some really fascinating insights you shared. We've got some gritty details, some grand ones too, but also some absolutely, well, unforgiving realities to explore. We're skipping the myths of glory, focusing on the everyday struggles. So prepare for maybe some aha moments and definitely a healthy dose of historical reality.
Yeah, it's fascinating, I think, to move beyond just the emperors and battles, to actually consider the lived experience of the average Roman. And the sources you've got here, they really do illuminate that contrast quite starkly.
Absolutely. So picture this. You wake up in an insula, basically. It's this ancient apartment block, right? Multi-story. And it's not pretty. Think several floors. Well, let's just say construction standards weren't quite what they are today. Apparently, the higher up you lived, the poorer you were, and the more likely your ceiling might just cave in.
That really raises a point about urban density back then. These insulated, maybe impressive in scale for the time, but often poorly built, kind of precarious places to live. And that density, the flammable materials, it created a very, very different living experience from the villas we sometimes picture. Close proximity, sure, maybe some community feel, but also probably a lot of social tension and disease spread like wildfire. It really shaped that urban experience.
And your room, tiny, like maybe a walk-in closet size, stone walls, probably damp and cold in winter, sweating in summer, no real windows, maybe just a hole for air and smoke. And the odd pigeon dropping by.
Yeah, right. And the bedding.
Oh, the bedding. Straw-filled mattress, probably crawling with lice, and maybe a damp wool blanket that smelled of, well, probably best not to imagine.
The material conditions really come through there. Very few possessions, a clay cup, a tunic, maybe a comb if you were lucky. It speaks to a level of material scarcity that's genuinely hard for us to grasp today.
Right. And forget a private bathroom. Not in your room, not even in the building. Usually you'd have your chamber pot, lurking in the corner, which you then had to carry down who knows how many rickety stairs to empty into the street gutter, hopefully without falling yourself. Imagine that chore every morning.
Yeah, the almost total absence of basic sanitation is just fundamental to understanding health, hygiene, everything in Roman cities. This reliance on public facilities, dumping waste in the street, had huge consequences for disease, quality of life, you name it.
Which brings us neatly to the latrina, the public restroom. Though rest probably wasn't part of the experience. Think less private stall, more social club for strangers doing their business side by side. Zero privacy. Long stone benches with holes, right, underneath. A trough with constantly flowing water carrying away. Well, the collective shame, as someone nicely put it.
A very different social dynamic, absolutely.
Yeah. And the tersorium. Get this. A communal sponge on a stick, kept in a pot of vinegar or salt water, for everyone to share. Imagine that in a public loo today. Just, wow, shared hygiene, or maybe the complete lack of it.
It really underscores the challenge of maintaining any kind of hygiene in that environment, doesn't it? That communal sponge. It's a stark contrast to our modern ideas of personal cleanliness.
Totally. And think you could just nip into an alley instead?
Yep.
Apparently, there were fines for public urination. Roman law enforcement wasn't exactly known for giving gentle warnings either. And after all that, no soap. Maybe a quick rinse from a communal basin that had seen better days. You leave feeling, well, lighter, but probably acutely aware of germs.
These details, they just bring the daily reality home, don't they? The laws might exist, but the practical hygiene was clearly a huge challenge.
So you've survived the stairs, the latrina, time for breakfast, the intaculum. And it's about as exciting as you might expect. Stale bread, panis rusticus, apparently dense enough you can knock someone out with it, and some watered down wine. Maybe, if you're lucky, a bit of cheese or some olives. But that's about it. No coffee, no eggs, no bacon sizzling away.
It's a very basic diet reflecting the agriculture of the time, the limits of food preservation. The focus was really on pure sustenance, not culinary delight for most ordinary people.
Exactly. You'd probably eat this standing up in the street or maybe squatting by a fountain, gnawing on your brick bread, maybe a drizzle of oil if you were lucky, or perhaps some garum. That infamous fermented fang sauce.
Yes.
It smelled like, well, let's just say it was an acquired taste.
Yeah.
Like concentrated essence of dead fish.
Yes. It highlights how they used fermentation for flavor and preservation. And it's a sensory detail that really jars with modern tastes.
Okay, so you're fueled up on stale bread and fish sauce. Now, the Roman workday. And unless you were lucky enough to be a senator or, had a rich patron, you were working hard, really hard. Laborer, porter carrying heavy loads, potter, bricklayer, street cleaner, maybe even a sewer worker. Ooh. Building Rome's wonders, but with really basic tools. Shovels, carrying bricks by hand, wearing sandals that offered, zero support.
The sheer physical toil involved in just building and maintaining that empire, it's often overlooked. These were tough jobs, basic tools, and significant risks of getting hurt.
Work started early, foremen shouting, probably waving a stick if you were late. You might lose a day's pay, or worse. Dangerous conditions were just normal. Risk of injury was constant. Even the slightly more elevated jobs, maybe a messenger, an accountant, a teacher, they weren't exactly glamorous either. Lots of competition among craftsmen, too, always undercutting each other. And women were working hard, too, let's not forget. Spinning, weaving, selling goods at market stalls, managing the household, raising children, and, surviving childbirth, which was incredibly dangerous. True multitasking.
Absolutely. The economic contribution of everyone, women included, was essential. Society just wouldn't function otherwise.
You might get a short lunch break.
Huh.
Maybe. So you've somehow made it through the morning. Now you need to navigate the streets. Imagine, I don't know, a packed market square, but with no plumbing and maybe random goats wandering around, chaotic, crowded.
Yeah, ancient cities were just intense environments compared to ours. No real zoning, poor sanitation, no traffic management to speak of. Very dynamic, but often pretty challenging.
Roman roads, okay, engineering marvels, sure. But also basically open sewers, urine, spilled wine from taverns, vomit, animal waste, bits of dropped garum, all flowing down the middle or in the gutters. They had raised footpaths, thank goodness, but one wrong step and, well, you're ankle-deep in something truly unpleasant.
It's a striking contrast, isn't it? The brilliant engineering for the roads themselves, but then such a lack of public health infrastructure for waste.
And the wagons. Apparently no speed limits, no crosswalks, and because heavy carts were banned during the day in the city center.
Ah, so they thundered through at night instead.
Exactly. Racing through narrow, dark streets. The risk of getting run over must have been constant, especially after dark.
That really underscores the dangers of just moving around the city.
Plus the air quality. Thick with smoke from workshops and cooking fires, incense from temples, the smell from the latrines, maybe dead animals just left in the street. And then you've got public spectacles happening all the time, brawls breaking out, protests, political parades blocking everything up for hours. Just trying to buy some lentils could turn into an ordeal.
The whole sensory experience, the noise, the smells, the sheer press of people, it would likely be completely overwhelming for us today.
Okay, so you're hot, dusty, probably dehydrated. Good news, aqueducts. Amazing feats of engineering bringing water to the city. Bad news, unless you're rich with a private connection, you're getting your water from a public fountain, shared with thousands of your closest neighbors who are coughing, sneezing, probably not washing their hands, using it for washing clothes, drinking, sometimes dunking a grubby kid in for a quick bath.
The aqueducts were incredible, yes, but access to clean water for the average person was still a major issue. Those fountains were vital, but also definite hygiene hotspots.
If you wanted a proper wash, you could go to the thermae, the public baths.
Yeah.
Sounds quite civilized, doesn't it? But think communal pools. No soap provided, no chlorine, obviously. Just tepid water shared by hundreds of people. Loud chatter, people selling snacks, others doing personal grooming in the water. You're basically just marinating in lukewarm public soup. Not exactly a relaxing spa day.
Right, and then there's the plumbing itself.
Oh yeah, the plumbing. Often made with lead pipes, which we now know can lead to some lovely side effects like anemia, gout, infertility, maybe even madness. Yikes.
The use of lead is a well-known issue with Roman tech, with potentially serious long-term health consequences. The baths, while important social centers, definitely posed health risks too.
So, ironically, what was often safer to drink than the water, especially in poorer areas?
Wine, presumably. Watered down, of course.
Exactly. Water was often viewed with suspicion because of contamination. So, watered-down wine was the standard drink all day long. For men, women, even children. Maybe it was the only way to cope, a gentle buzz to get you through the day in a crumbling empire.
It certainly highlights the public health realities and the kind of practical ways people tried to mitigate those risks.
Okay, let's talk about pain. Because welcome to the Roman Empire, where pain wasn't just like an occasional thing. It was the background noise of life. Stub your toe on a loose paving stone, break your teeth, break a bone, maybe wrap it in a dirty rag and hope for the best, get a splinter, good luck fighting off the infection. There were no ergonomic tools, no comfy padded seats, just constant physical stress.
That lack of basic comfort, the absence of effective pain management, it's a really stark reminder of the physical hardships people endured. Even minor injuries could become life-threatening without proper care.
And surgery, if you needed it. No anesthesia. Maybe some wine to dull the senses, but basically you were awake and screaming into a piece of wood. Dislocated your shoulder. Some random person might try to yank it back into place, maybe successfully, maybe not. Dental work. Think less dentist, more blacksmith. Crude tools, lots of force. And if you were poor or enslaved, forget about specialized care. The upper classes might have embraced stoicism, suffering in noble silence, but for most people, it was just suffering.
The medical knowledge was just so limited, wasn't it? And the lack of pain relief meant even things we consider routine today would have been incredibly traumatic. Plus, the social disparities in who could even access any care just made things worse for the majority.
So, you're actually injured or sick? You go see a Roman doctor. And honestly, surviving the treatment might be harder than surviving the ailment. It was this chaotic mix of, like, Greek theory, the four humors being out of balance, you know.
Right, imbalance causing illness.
Yeah, plus some mystical guesswork, maybe throwing some leaves at the problem, and the default treatment for almost everything, bloodletting. Leeches, knives, didn't matter if you had a headache or felt morally weak. Apparently letting some blood out was the answer. It seems crazy now, but it stemmed from that humoral theory, that idea of restoring balance.
Roman medicine really was a blend, wasn't it? Some inherited Greek ideas, some practical observation, but also practices we now know were useless or even harmful. That four humors theory was just dominant.
They did have surgical tools, scalpels, forceps, even bone drills, but again, no anesthesia. You're wide awake. Antiseptics, not really a thing. Maybe they'd wash a wound with wine or vinegar, which might have helped a bit, but mostly just burned like crazy. Infection was a huge killer. And prescriptions could include honey, garlic, but also things like crushed beetles or even animal dung. Seriously, if things got really dire, you might go sleep in a temple, hoping a god would send you a cure in a dream. Unsurprisingly, mortality rates were incredibly high.
The understanding of infection, of how diseases spread, was just so rudimentary, it contributed massively to those high death rates. The reliance on ritual alongside these basic, sometimes dangerous techniques really shows the state of their medical knowledge.
Right. So after a long day of avoiding injury, breathing questionable air, and maybe getting leeched, you're starving. Time for cena, dinner. But banish all thoughts of pizza, pasta, tomatoes, potatoes. None of that existed in Italy yet. No chocolate, no sugar, no coffee. This is purely about survival. You probably get a wooden bowl of something brownish and vaguely warm, most likely pulsed like boiled spelt beans or lentils, described as tasting like wet gravel. Yum. Protein was rare, expensive, and probably often a bit apt. Preservation meant heavy salting, smoking, or dousing it in that lovely garum. Joy.
The sheer limitation of ingredients plus the preservation methods really shaped that diet. It was incredibly basic for most, and yeah, by our standards, probably not very appealing.
If you were feeling fancy, maybe some boiled vegetables, a hunk of hard cheese, perhaps a fig. Rich Romans, of course, ate weirder things. Flamingo tongues, stuffed dormice, jellyfish, mostly just to show off their wealth. Your wine is still watered down, the water source still questionable. Dessert, maybe some dried fruit or nuts. Or maybe you're fasting because it's a feast day. Definitely no tiramisu. And napkins? Nope. You wipe your greasy fingers on a shared cloth, or just on your tunic. Classy. By the end, you're technically full, but maybe a bit queasy, and your breath probably smells strongly of garlic, sour wine, and just a hint of despair.
That stark contrast between the diets of the rich and poor really highlights the massive social inequalities, doesn't it? Even basic table manners, or lack thereof, were different.
So the sun finally sets. Surely things quieten down a bit at night.
You'd hope so, wouldn't you?
Nope, not in Rome. It just shifts from being noisy and chaotic to being dark and downright dangerous. There's no street lighting, unless you're very wealthy and have lamps outside your villa. Most people are navigating by moonlight and memory, which makes you a prime target for thieves lurking in those dark, narrow alleys.
That lack of public lighting is a huge factor. It created major security problems at night, really adding to the dangers of city life.
And the vigils. The night watch. Apparently they were underpaid, overworked, probably easily bribed, and totally outnumbered. Criminals knew they could get away with a lot. Thieves, muggers, maybe even bored ex-gladiators looking for trouble. If you were walking home alone after dark, you were taking a serious risk. And then there's fire. A constant terror in those crowded wooden insulae. Cooking after dark was often illegal for this reason, but people still did it. And if a fire broke out, no organized evacuation plan, just panic.
Fire was a massive, ever-present threat in ancient cities. Dense populations, flammable materials, very limited firefighting. A recipe for disaster.
And if it wasn't fire or thieves keeping you awake, it was the noise. Drunken parties spilling out of taverns, loud religious processions, neighbors having furious arguments through thin walls. Sleep in ancient Rome must have been a real luxury. Silence? Probably a myth. Safety? Pretty much reserved for the rich, the armed, or the incredibly lucky.
That constant noise, the lack of security, it just further paints a picture of the relentless challenges of daily life in a big Roman city.
So you wake up again in your crumbling insula, survive the sanitation, the work, the streets, the questionable food, the dangerous night, and then you have to do it all over again. Honestly, I think most modern humans wouldn't last a week. We'd probably crumble by lunchtime, begging for antibiotics and indoor plumbing, but the Romans did it for centuries. And somehow, amidst all that grime, brutality, and noise, Rome functioned. They built amazing things, ran an empire, developed laws, philosophy, but it clearly came at a huge human cost for the average person living it day to day.
The resilience is quite remarkable, isn't it? And the ingenuity they showed, despite all those hardships, they still managed to build this incredibly influential civilization.
Now, while life in Rome was, well, like that, power and leadership could look very different elsewhere. Let's switch gears and consider someone like Rodigon of Parthia. A Parthian princess around the 2nd century BCE, she definitely wasn't waking up in a Roman insula. Her world involved, fighting rebels, not just planning dinner parties.
This is a great contrast. It brings in a perspective from outside the Roman sphere and highlights different ways women could wield power in antiquity.
Exactly. She apparently learned statecraft, military command, how to wear armor. Parthian women weren't always visible in historical record, but some clearly ruled, plotted, became legends in their own right. And Rodigon became this potent symbol of Parthian pride. Famously, she vowed not to wash or tend to her hair until a major rebellion was crushed. Can you imagine?
That's a very dramatic vow. It really underscores the kind of personal commitment and symbolic gestures leaders could use back then to rally support and show determination.
Yeah, this rebellion in the western provinces was a serious threat. Local aristocrats, city leaders challenging the king's power. So Rodigon herself takes command of the army, puts on her armor, makes this very public vow about her hair. Must have been a nightmare for the court hairdressers, but apparently it worked. Soldiers rallied behind this unwashed warrior woman.
Her leadership really challenges our sometimes narrow view of female roles in ancient warfare and politics. Her willingness to adopt this, let's say, unconventional image to achieve her military aims is really striking.
And she was good at it too. Sharp military mind. Used mobility, feigned retreats, hit-and-run tactics effectively. Her troops admired her as a tactician, not just a royal figurehead. The siege of the last rebel stronghold. She apparently just cut off their supplies and waited them out. Weaponized time, essentially, victory. And then, still unbathed, she had this big public ceremony where she finally washed her hair. A hugely symbolic act of cleansing the land and reclaiming those cities.
That whole narrative shows real strategic thinking, effective use of tactics, maybe unconventional ones, and that cleansing ritual afterwards is such a powerful symbol of restoring order and sovereignty.
She then took the long way home, visiting all the reclaimed cities, making sure things were stable. Her legend grew, even if, as you say, the formal court records might have downplayed a woman's military role later on. But she really redefined loyalty, showed the power of a personal vow, remembered, as they say, by the dust of Parthia.
Rodigon's story is a fantastic example of how leadership can manifest differently and how enduring legacies are often built through actions and popular memory, not just official histories.
And then there's Queen Tomyris of the Massagetæ, another powerhouse woman from a different cultural context. Daughter of the steppe, leading these fierce nomadic horse archers, learned to ride and shoot practically from birth. In her culture, women often trained and fought alongside men. She became leader, commanded her armies, negotiated with powerful kings like Cyrus the Great of Persia.
Tomyris is another powerful example, isn't she? Female leadership in a nomadic society where women often had more prominent roles in warfare and governance compared to, say, settled agricultural societies like Rome or Greece.
Definitely. She faced off against Cyrus the Great, who wanted to expand his Persian empire. He apparently tried a trick, first proposing marriage to absorb her territory. Tomyris wasn't fooled. She saw right through his ploy and rejected him flat out. So Cyrus invaded. She warned him it was a bad idea. Then, the story goes, she cleverly lured the Persians into a trap involving a lot of wine. Her own son was actually killed in the ensuing battle, which must have been devastating.
That clash between Tomyris and Cyrus is fascinating. It's a conflict between two types of power. the vast, settled Persian Empire, and this fierce, mobile, nomadic confederation. Her strategic use of the terrain, her understanding of her enemy, it's very clear.
Absolutely. And after her son's death, Tomyris vowed revenge. She launched this incredibly fierce counterattack. The Persians were routed, and Cyrus the Great himself was killed in the battle. The legend, and it might just be a legend, but it's potent, says she found his body and submerged his head in a wineskin filled with blood, telling him to drink his fill of it. Whether that happened or not, she successfully defended her people's sovereignty with incredible fierceness and dignity. Her legacy lives on in stories, not stone monuments, a true symbol of female strength and resistance against empire.
Tomyris' story, even if embellished over time, serves as this incredibly powerful narrative of resistance. Resistance against imperial expansion and a testament to the fierce independence of those nomadic peoples.
So amidst all these different ways of life, these different power structures, there's another thread we can follow across the ancient world: beekeeping. It offers this surprising glimpse of order, ingenuity, and a deep connection with nature, even amidst the chaos we discussed. Let's start with Egypt. Beekeeping there was almost like a state-sponsored science. Even had divine approval. Bees supposedly came from the tears of the sun god Ra. They had this really organized mobile system using clay tube hives that they'd move up and down the Nile on boats to follow the blossoms. Use smoke to calm the bees. Honey was vital. Food, medicine used in mummification, offered to gods, even used as currency. Beeswax for cosmetics, embalming, writing tablets. Bees were symbols of balance, order, healing.
That Egyptian system shows a really sophisticated understanding of managing natural resources, doesn't it? And how deeply they integrated bees and honey into every aspect of life, from the practical to the deeply spiritual.
Then Mesopotamia. They actually had laws protecting bees and hives in the Code of Hammurabi. That's how important they were. They had dedicated bee gardens or apiaries, often attached to temples or royal estates, suggesting honey was maybe an elite resource too. Honey and beeswax used for offerings, medicine, trade. Bees seen as divine messengers. They used hives made of mud bricks or woven baskets, a real focus on order and law, even extending to insects.
The fact that beekeeping was protected by law in Mesopotamia really highlights its economic and social significance in those early urban societies. It wasn't just a casual activity.
Move over to the Hittites. Bees were sacred to them, seen as messengers of purity. They used honey and bees ritualistically, like in ceremonies, to remove evil influences. Honey for libations, sacrifices, anointing oils. Hives were clay or woven, often kept near temples, with beekeepers under temple control. They even seem to have recognized bee migration patterns.
That Hittite reverence for bees, integrating them so deeply into religious practice, really underscores the spiritual significance ancient people could attach to the natural world, even to insects.
Greece next. They made some key innovations. Movable terracotta hives, often with removable lids, making inspection easier. They mastered using smoke, even developed ceramic bellows for better control. Aristotle famously studied bee behavior. Honey was revered, linked to ambrosia, the food of the gods. Bees associated with goddesses like Artemis and Demeter. The hive itself sometimes seen as a metaphor for the ideal city-state, the polis.
Yeah, the Greek developments in hive design, plus their more scientific observations of bee behavior, demonstrate a really advancing understanding of apiculture, moving towards actual management rather than just harvesting.
And finally, Rome. They really scaled up beekeeping. We have detailed instructions on how to do it from writers like Varro and Columella. They use various hive types, hollowed logs, cork, pottery, woven wickers, use smoke, often infused with herbs. Honey was everywhere in Roman life food, back to the Sana, medicine, and energy source. Large villas often had dedicated honey farms, worked by enslaved labor. The hive even became a model for the well-run Roman household, the domus.
The Roman approach really reflects their characteristic emphasis on organization, efficiency, large-scale production, integrating resources like honey fully into their vast economic system.
And across all these cultures, you see this recurring theme: a divine connection. Bees weren't just insects. They were often seen as spiritual beings. Honey wasn't just food. It was a divine gift, used in sacred rituals for purification. And honey is medicine. It was a staple in the ancient pharmacy. Egyptian papyri, Hippocrates in Greece, Ayurveda in India, Pliny in Rome, they all mention it, used for treating wounds, infections, coughs, digestive issues. They clearly recognized its antibacterial properties, even if they didn't know why it worked. Beeswax used in plasters, even dental fillings.
That widespread recognition of honey's medicinal value, alongside the ingenuity shown in beekeeping practices across so many diverse cultures, it really highlights this common thread of human observation and interaction with the natural world, finding value in utility and often reverence, too.
So from the intimate, often brutal details of a Roman morning to the powerful, defiant leadership of queens like Rodigon and Tomyris, and then to this surprisingly sophisticated and ordered world of ancient beekeeping. These glimpses really reveal how multifaceted the ancient world was. It's so much more complex than just the emperors and battles we usually hear about. Hopefully, you now have a more vivid sense of the struggles, the beliefs, and also the incredible ingenuity of people back then.
Absolutely. And if you connect these dots, you see how things we might overlook, like sanitation or diet or how you manage bees, profoundly shape people's lives and experiences. And those contrasting stories of leadership, resource management, they offer really valuable insights into just how varied ancient societies and their values could be.
Exactly. And maybe this deep dive leaves you pondering this thought. Consider how seemingly small details, the design of a beehive, the lack of decent drains profoundly shape entire civilizations. So what seemingly mundane aspects of our modern lives, things we take for granted, might future historians look back on and find equally telling about us? Definitely something to think about.